to be able to have bring the Resonance Network to share its work and the powerful work that does this. And I think that this session is a great way to conclude this conference as we begin to really be clear about how we are imagining and reimagining a world without sexual violence. So I am now proud to be able to hand the podium over to my good friend and colleague from Resonance Network, Ariel Jacobson. Ariel?
Thank you so much, David and Tori and the entire team at NSAC, all the interpreters. Thank you. Welcome, everyone. We are so glad to have you here. My name is Ariel Jacobson. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm calling today from Albany, New York, on occupied Mohican lands on the banks of the Hudson River and at the outskirts of the lands of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy. My ancestors, who are not indigenous to the land that I live on, come from the west bank of the Qing River, from the Yangtze River Delta, and from forested lands of present-day Belarus. My people are farmers, foresters, artists, teachers, mathematicians, scientists, and storytellers. And as one of the facilitators of this conversation today, I come to you as a survivor and as a storyteller. And I'm also a student of many, many teachers from both elder and younger generations. And I want to speak some of the names of my storytelling teachers in particular, including Norma Wong, Atema Eklai, Ren Dragon, Erica Jen, Alexis Flanagan, whose name I know many of you saw in the program, and I'm serving as a little bit of an understudy for her today as she couldn't be here. The other storytellers with whom I share the space today, and countless authors and poets and friends and family who filled my life with stories of past and future. So I wanted to kick off this conversation by telling you a little bit about and inviting you into a community of Resonance Network that David mentioned. So Resonance is a network of folks who believe that another world is possible. We believe that amidst all the grief and injustice and violence of this moment that we're experiencing, that another world beyond sexual violence, beyond interpersonal and state violence, that a world rooted in deep relationship, vibrant community, and connection to our planet is the world that we all deserve. Folks in Resonance share the intuition that if we can practice and bring about transformation in ourselves, we can bring it about in our communities, and we can transform the unjust systems that are causing harm in our communities and the communities that we love. We're planting the seeds of this transformation each day through our relationships with each other, with our neighbors and our loved ones, in our organizations, our movements, and all the collective spaces and systems that we build together. So next slide, please. So I wanted to show a little bit about these seeds that we're planting that are represented in the image on this screen. And we have a Spanish language version of this slide. So maybe in a couple moments, we can switch to that one after letting this sit here for a moment. But this is just a little bit of an illustration to think about how we're generating possibilities for healing from harm, how we're listening to ancestral wisdom and nurturing spirit. Are we fostering equity and shared leadership? And what are our practices of truth-telling and accountability about power and oppression so we can get at root causes of violence and find pathways forward together? So today, we're here to have a conversation where we reimagine our current reality. And more than anything, we're here together to tell stories from deep within us. Stories of a world we know is possible and that we seek to bring into being together, even though we may not experience it fully in our lifetimes. As we heard Farah speak so beautifully about in the first plenary of NSAC, we heard her say she's standing on the shores and she's praying for revolution, and we may not see it in our lifetimes. But if we are to create transformative rather than just tinkering strategies, we have to have a clear, embodied understanding of what we're making leaps toward. We need to know how it sounds in our minds, how it vibrates in our hearts and in our stomachs, and what that world feels like in our bodies, or else we'll continue to work in a way that creates just incremental changes rather than deep transformation. And the more we envision, the more we imagine, the more we practice, that's what will enable us to reach deep, to make the bold moves that are necessary to end sexual violence. So over the past few days, as part of NSAC, we've been inspired. We've heard a lot of analysis. We've delved into histories of policies. We've explored strategies for prevention, for healing, for abolition. We've also heard stories of how we got here, personally or as a field, different strands of movements. And now, together in this session, we're going to spend some time in the stories of where we're going next. So go to the next slide. So I just wanted to share the team of folks who came together to create the session, some of whom you'll be hearing from directly as storytellers. And I wanted to point out that Clelia is with us as a visual storyteller to capture kernels of the talk story that you're going to be part of. And then Laurel is also with us to make many of the technical elements of this space run smoothly. So we wanted to thank her for being an essential part of this team. And next slide, please. So how will we spend our time together? We're going to be telling stories. We're going to also share a brief breath practice together. So this might be a little bit different from some of the other sessions. We're going to be steeped in story. We're even going to give you a little bit of space, time to reflect on your own dreams for a world without sexual violence and what it will take to get there. And we'll end with our storytellers making some offerings to us as we close out our time at NSAC. So now I'm going to hand it right over to our storytellers to share a little bit about themselves. And I'm going to start with you, Ty.
Katiayao Hanuat, Katiayao Ariel, Hamakis, Katiayao Taxiwas Tots, Enim Winitwas Atitwatit, Loitza Kina, Inwas, Nimipu Ayat, Enim Nexasa Hewis, Timina Ilkanich. Good afternoon. Thank you, Ariel. Thank you for all of you being here today. In my Indigenous language, I told you that my name is the Storyteller. In the language of our colonizers, my name is Ty Simpson. I will answer to either. My pronouns are she and her. I also told you that I am a citizen of the Nimipu Nation, otherwise known as the Nez Perce tribe of Idaho by our colonizers. I am with you on the ancestral unceded territory of the Niwa and Numu people. They are what we know in our colonizers' language as the Shoshone, Paiute, Bannock, and Yakama nations. Idaho is also built on the indigenous homelands of the Kootenai, Coeur d'Alene, and Nez Perce nations as well. I am so grateful to be here. Storytelling is my love language. It's my spiritual practice. And it's really, I think, probably the most authentic offering that I can bring to the conference. This is my first experience participating in NSAC. On the clock, I work for the Idaho Coalition Against Sexual and Domestic Violence, hopefully to use storytelling, anti-oppression, and anti-racism frameworks to dismantle violence within Indigenous communities, specifically on my homelands here. I did want to start us off with why we're all here as storytellers. I understand from my teachings that storytelling is how we hold all of the generations together. In my language, I say tetwatet inahnetsa, and what that means and how that loosely translates is the stories that are carried are not my own. They are passed generation to generation. The stories that I'm creating in my lifetime belong to my descendants, and the stories that I'm telling now and today also belong to my ancestors as well. So holding all the generations at once is probably one of the most powerful experiences that we can have as individuals, as communities. It's passing our ways of knowing, our cultural knowledge. I also want to offer that storytelling is the most direct connection between any of us. Everybody is a storyteller. And we need to really lean on storytelling as an ancestral practice, not only for healing, but as a way to build community, two things that our world as we know it deeply, deeply needs. So I hope that today you leave with some connection to your own story and who your people are, the story of your name, and that's a practice that you can share with other folks in your community and in your work as advocates. The stories that you hear from survivors and folks impacted by violence are the data. That's where the solutions live. That's where restorative and transformative justice live. So that's the power of storytelling, and we hope that you take that away today. Really quickly, as a storyteller, I use traditional and contemporary oral storytelling primarily. I'm not a good writer. I have really bad writing anxiety, but I can talk your ear off and tell you all about who my people are. As I told you, Atitwatit is my name in my language, and I was named after my 5th great grandmother, a woman who did not always live with her people. She traveled with settlers, trappers during westward expansion, during settler colonialism, the genesis of settler colonialism. And every once in a while, season by season, she would come home to her people and teach her people about the world around them. And I resonate with that story quite a bit because I did not grow up on my Indian reservation. I grew up living overseas and in parts of Chicago, but I always came home. I always came home to my katzat, my mother's mother, and taught her what I had seen. And conversely, she taught me everything that I needed to know to survive as an Indigenous woman, as a Black woman in the world. And I'm so grateful that I'm able to carry these stories into our next generation. I will go ahead and pass to Raven to introduce themselves, also as a storyteller, because I'm very grateful to be in the presence of other such powerful storytellers. So thank you, Raven.
Thank you, Ty. I'm so grateful to be here with all of you today. My name is Raven. I use they and them pronouns in these spaces where we are looking to be more intimate, deeper and deeper still. I live on unceded territory of the Manahoac people in so-called Virginia. We know that the names that our states and cities carry are not the names of the people who tended to the land. I am a doula in many ways to those who are coming into the world and those who are going back to where they came. I am a therapist. I am a healer. I am someone who will sing the words to the song in the wrong order and be adamant that I am right. I am a storyteller of humor and a storyteller of remembering. And my people, I can only tell you who my people are for about 4 generations. My grandfather and his people were sharecroppers. They taught me to be a corn shucker and to be a tea snapper. My people are like hyssop, and they know to wash the poke twice before eating it. My people are like bamboo earrings and deep, thick eyeliner and waking up early in the morning to work a job where sometimes you got to make $1 out of 15 cents. My people are those whose indigenous roots were disrupted, and that disruption has no name, it has no body, and it has no form. My people are those who were recreated in the middle of the night. My people are queer. They're queer in ways that are unclaimed and unnamed. My people are tender with their tending, and they are great with their laughter. Storytelling for me is remembering back into the waves, listening to the wind when it moves, and knowing that those are the songs of my people too. My people are those who sing songs in churches and on corners, those who sing songs in showers and in cars. My people are those who sing songs for medicine, for balms in cities and streets where blood is lost. My people are grieving, and my people are Black. They are Black and they are beautiful, and they tell me to be proud and to sing too. And I'm grateful to be here so that I can keep remembering. And in my remembering, I know to shuck corn and to snap peas, to be like hyssop, to wash my poke twice, to buy my bamboo earrings from the corner store and to wear them proudly wherever I go, to be tender with my tending and great with my laughter. And this remembering, it makes me whole too. My people are those who pivot when they need to and are born in the middle of the night. And so I pass to my colleague and friend in storytelling, who will carry us forward in our remembering. So Tanya, it's your turn.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much, Ty and Raven and Ariel and Laurel and everyone who's made this possible. My name is Tanya. I'm a daughter of migrant parents, a descendant of the monsoon rains in the mountains of Palmar Grande, Mexico, the Aguas Calientes of the Zacatecas, raised by ocean waters in Chumash people's land, held by Ohlone people's coastline, and now learning from the Rio Grande waters running through Sandia and Tiwa people's land, all the way down to the lands of my people. My people are all the beings of the lands that have cared for me and continue to care for me across time. I've always been soft, a listener, a quiet contemplator, a deep feeler. For a while, I used to think I was this way because of the traumas I survived, because I coped this way. And now I realize I survived because I was this way. It's taken time for me to understand that I've been trusted with old wisdom, that my softness, that my feeling, my sometimes youthful ways are a good home for these gifts. I understand my role as a storyteller to share what arrives to us collectively. The stories are not just mine. They're shared in the collective pool of our archived wisdom. Today's stories are weavings from teachers, sharers, and other storytellers too. People like Dr. Alexis Pauline Gumbs, like Adrienne Marie Brown, and I am so moved by saying their names. Robin Wall Kimmerer, Octavia Butler, Gloria Ansaldúa, my mother Silvia Olivera, Rosa González, Edika Chilome, Armida, Sol, Grandmother Water, beloved elder teacher Norma Wong, and all the ancestors and descendants whose names I do not know. Thank you.
Thank you all so much for sharing with us who you are, who you come from. And I just want to take a breath here as we're going to begin to dive into some more storytelling and invite all of you as participants to just be here with the stories, be here as much as possible. And I too am feeling the well of water in my eyes sometimes. And so just feel the water. Let the water flow if it flows. Let the fire rage if it rages. Let the wind blow if it blows. It's all here, and that's what stories are. And so we're going to get right into it. So I'm going to invite our storytellers to please start by sharing a story of your dream of a world without sexual violence. And whichever of our storytellers would like to kick us off, please do.
I'll share my offering. I usually defer to elders, but I think we're all the same age. All equally matriarchs, right? I love that. I shared this story as part of the Collective Thriving Conference that was hosted by the Idaho Coalition back in December. I had a very powerful and endearing opportunity to share the stage with two of my Anishinaabe sisters from Minneapolis area, northern Minnesota area. And the discussion and the focus was entirely on Indigenous futurism. And that's what reimagining a world without sexual violence or domestic violence is. What Indigenous futurism is, how do we create this world where we thrive, where our Indigenous ways, our old ways are made new so that there is enough, so that we are living as my ancestors used to, in a way that protected nature, that honored each other, that treated babies and children like the tiny elders that they are, that ensured that women were honored and revered as pillars of the community in the way that we are. But that conversation at first, when I was approached with the topic, really sat strangely with me. It triggered anger, it triggered pain, it triggered grief. It is hard to imagine futurism when there are 5,700 missing Indigenous women across the country. Countless other women and two-spirit relatives who have been murdered in the face of settler colonialism and as a direct result of it. It is hard to imagine futurism, imagine this world when I'm not necessarily safe going to the grocery store. And it is deeply painful to imagine a world that ensures that we survive into the future, that ensures that my language and my land are healthy, that nature, our first mother, is well taken care of into the future. Back in 2016, I was able to visit Standing Rock Indian Reservation with my sister cousin. She was making her journey through Sundance, a very powerful and deeply spiritual ceremony for that particular nation. And it was her last year. It is 3 days of fasting and sweat and dancing and singing, a test of how much we can give in our earthly bodies to ensure spiritual strength. And I danced as hard as I could with her. I prayed as hard as I could with her in that space. And this is the dead summer of North Dakota. If you can imagine, it's very hot and very dry. When I returned home, I started to have dreams about a crow woman, a raven woman. I can't tell what she is. And she walks slowly in the dream, hunched over, using a tukus, a cane. And she has these tattered old gray and black wings that drag behind her when she walks. She speaks in a language that I don't understand, but I know that I understand what she's saying in the dream. And she shows me these vignettes of who I am as a woman. She shows me learning new things. She shows me speaking and beating and reading and teaching. And it's really interesting how all of those moments come to fruition in real life. She's showing visions of my future self in real life. I tend to fixate on the new things that she's shown me in my life: how to sew ribbon skirts, how to tie sweetgrass, how to harvest, where to find the juiciest berries during the season. Like, these are the things that she's showing me in the dreams. I noticed after a while, after a couple of years of having these dreams of her, that she never shows me as an old woman. She never shows me with children. She never shows me with grandchildren. And that makes big visions of the future and big visions for generations down the road very difficult to manifest for myself, because I've just never seen it and I've never imagined it. My colleagues here have mentioned teachings from Norma, and one of the Norma Wong teachings that resonates with me is how in our lives we have to live good lives because our lives are telling a story. We have to do good work in our lives because that good work is also part of the story. And the story that we're telling into the future has to be a good story with a good ending. And while I struggle with futurism and while I struggle to reimagine a world without sexual violence, I do understand that the work that I'm doing in my life is good work, and it's tireless and it's painful, but at the same time, there are such moments of joy and such moments of power and medicine and healing. If you've never been in a room full of Indigenous women laughing together, that in and of itself is medicine that heals us in a way that I can't begin to describe. And celebrating and telling those stories into the future is the best thing that I can do for this reimagined world without sexual violence. Doing good work in our lives now. And I have to do it urgently because the Crow woman hasn't shown me as an old woman. My biggest lesson and my biggest takeaway from these stories, from the Crow woman, from my time in Standing Rock, from my time at the Coalition, is that every day is an opportunity to change the future. Every day is an opportunity to bring our ancestral old ways, our ancestral power, and intersect them with who we are as revolutionaries. And I hope that all of you walk away with that wisdom also, that what you know, what your body knows, what the land knows and remembers we intersect that with the work that we're doing now, the good work that we're all doing now, and push that as far forward into the future as we possibly can. Thank you. That is all.
Bowing to you, Ty, and your people who told us a story through you. Picking up where you were, reminders that we are great with our laughter is what my people say. And so before I start with my story, I want to name my mother, who woke me up with a dream this morning that I'm not yet grown, and turned me back to my childhood. So here we are together at a story that I just recently remembered. My dream of a world without sexual violence begins with returning to a time that means that we're not going backwards, but yet we're going deeper, and returning to the ones who stayed behind, returning to the ones who time stood still for, returning to the pillars to say the names we don't remember, the names we can't forget, the names that our tongues can't pick up to say, and returning to those whose ways are value-based rather than outcome-based. I really believe that the world without sexual violence exists, and it exists when we return to our people, when we return and go deeper in to what is tangible and interconnected. So there's a story of my childhood about needing to go back home, and my mother telling me that no matter what happened, I grew up in Houston. And so, my apologies to those people who tended to the land. I don't know who those people are, but I bow to them and their tending. But my mother kept telling me that no matter where we were in the city, if I got on this specific highway, I would always get back home. I just wrote it down, and I took 2 exits. I would know where I was. I would see the shaved ice stand. I would see the man who sold elote on the corner. I would call him my friend, and I would know how to return back home. And when my mother woke me up this morning to tell me that I am not yet grown and I am still a child, I remember that there is a way back home, returning to the place where we were free in our bodies, where our gender was that of warrior or nurturer rather than the containers that exist for us in this day and time. Returning means to go back to the direction that you most know to be true. Returning means finding the story, finding the highway that no matter which way you go on it, you're going to find a friend who says elote, who tells you to go home. This is my dream of a world without sexual violence. It's a dream that I can see as I'm awake, because there's always a direction back to it. There's always a way to return to the ones who stayed behind. And those ones who stayed behind are our elders. Those are the names that we are repeating. Those are the ones like Toni K. Bambara, who tells us in the Salt Eaters novel, she has a character who says, "Are you sure, sweetheart, that you want to be well? Just so you're sure, sweetheart, and ready to be healed, because wholeness is no trifling matter, a lot of weight when you're well." There is much to return to. There's much unfolding from our returning. But I will forever remember my mother telling me before I was old enough to drive that I just took this one highway in this crowded city of Houston, that I could always get back home, that I could always look for my friend on the corner who was selling elote next to the shaved ice stand, and that there I would find the ones who stayed behind, the ones who held our stories, the ones who remind us that in the doing of this work, we are transformed and changed, and that there's always a true direction back home. So the world without sexual violence exists if we choose to get deeper into this and return back to the truest direction that we can find. Thank you.
Deep, deep bows of gratitude. to both of you. I'm going to begin a story that came in dreams. I'm going to begin with a song that came to me 15 years ago, also in dreams, sleepwalking on Ohlone people's lands. Memoria, 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 memoria. Right now, in the future that is occurring and living out its purpose as we live ours in the present and our ancestors live theirs in the past, there is a gathering occurring. A gathering where our descendants are arriving to the place where the oldest waters are cared for, revered, sat with in council. Each person present has been lovingly cared for, taught the skills they would need to fulfill their duties by a teacher who taught them, and a teacher before them taught them, as was the tradition of their people to apprentice and teach, like doulas and midwives and curanderecs and parterecs. Share their knowledge, create the pathways necessary to be each other's harvest. Here, the people come together as they do every 4 years to meet with the Council of Water. Each visitor arrives with an offering, a single drop of water from the water archive of their home. Water who has sat with the people and the land and all its beings, listening, collecting the stories, the triumphs, the learnings and reconciliations, the rest and the laughter, the generative conflict and restoration of the people, the land, and all its beings. Each visitor has been joyfully invited to be a water bearer for their people, knowing the responsibility of their task to be sacred. For reuniting the waters in this way requires the gentlest of listening, the strength of softness. Together, in the good company of all the water bearers, they will listen to the counsel of their collective waters and sit with the stories, the triumphs, the learnings and reconciliations, the rest and the laughter, the generative conflict and restoration of all the people, all the land, and all its beings. When their listening is complete, each one of them will return home with a single drop of the collective water to offer the water archive of their homelands and share with their people the lessons of the Water Council. Memoria, memoria. But before the Water Council and the water bearers and the softness that was needed to listen to the water, there were other gatherings and other teachers and many students and other stories and generative conflicts and restorations and learnings and triumphs. Many people took on the work of caring for themselves, began cooking more, built homes for one another, made it regular business to live on purpose, shared seeds and learned their names, remembered tea recipes, loved themselves, loved even the ones they did not know. And from there, grew trusting more, intuiting more, feeling more, breathing more, slowing down enough so that their acuity to the sacred instructions for living more were heard across time, and the voices of ancestors and descendants showered them with gifts of knowing to pave their way. Some say it may have started when people realized that abundance thrived in their relationships. So Black people were loved sacredly, Indigenous people were loved sacredly, children were loved sacredly, elders were loved sacredly, disabled people were loved sacredly. Trans women, femmes, girls, non-binary people were loved sacredly. Land and all its beings were loved sacredly. In all our people's languages, beloved community became the sacred instruction of every day. Others say it started even before that, possibly on a virtual meeting or two, when the pandemic had started and the people with hope started believing in them, and the people with dreams started saying them out loud, and the people with votes went out to cast them and brought everyone they knew along with them. What everyone agrees on is that people got brave. People made leaps they thought they couldn't make and made them together. The people made bold moves because they understood they were not going to think their way out of sexual violence, because they understood that ours was an evolution of the spirit, an evolution of our imagination, one in which we knew that being in right relationship with water, the land, and all its beings, including us humans, has everything to do with ending white supremacy, everything to do with ending all forms of violence. Because the people knew that showing up to their own lives gave them access to the memory and the dream of what it is to be human. And from that human honoring place, it could care for those who had been hurt, and those who had experienced the most harm were placed in the center of our collective care and healing and protection and sacred reverence. And those who had caused harm were placed in our collective care and healing too, because that's what we did from then on with our wounded parts. When the who of us had suffered, we cared for the hurt. We offered it balm, rest. We prayed on it. We loved on it. We showed up to polls, brought all the chairs for all of us to sit in, got rid of tables that never made room, made counters and comfy beds and all the resting places we needed to convene. Because that's what it took. Bold moves, bold moves, bold moves. And that is how Abuelita Agua, Grandmother Water, restores the people, lives on to continue being our collective memory of all life.
Deep gratitude. And I want to just share some of the things that are coming up for me in the stories. We live by our dreams, and our dreams are shaped by our lives. Our ancestors speak to us in whispers, in songs, in medicine, in laughter. And we can name this work of ending sexual violence for what it is, a sacred responsibility to the generations that came before us and those that come after us. That it will take healing the land, healing ourselves, healing our community, coming into community and beloved space, beloved community. So I want to just invite storytellers to share anything else that is speaking within you. As you hear the other stories, we know that stories grow and breathe only in relationship to other stories. So I want to invite the storytellers to continue whatever is arising for you.
I have something, an offering back to Tanya, actually, in her story of Abuelita Agua, Abuelita Agua. We say Cuscusquia, Clear River. We have a part of our creation story that talks of how Creator brought all of the large animals together near Lewiston, Idaho. We call it Seminicum in our language, and it was on the banks of the Clearwater River. And Creator asked all of these animals to give a part of themselves to make sure that humanity could exist and thrive and grow. And it was actually steelhead that offered himself first to humans, because steelhead is the fish that we harvest in the wintertime when it's cold. But that's who feeds us through those cold, harsh winters. And then the second creature, the second being to offer herself was the water, to give steelhead a home. And those first two things, so for you to say Abuelita Agua was is the center, the river is also a gift. She's offered herself as a gift in that same way so that humans can exist. And our responsibility to the water is to keep nature in balance, to protect her, to never take more than we need, and always give back to each other and give back to nature. So I just love that there's a deep connection of water for all of us, right? And we can see it. One of the things that my grandmother always talked about is that the more disconnected that we are from the land, the more disconnected we are from each other and from our own healing and from our medicine. And in all of the violence I've ever endured as a woman, as an adult woman, my mom taught me the practice, and my grandmother taught me the practice of leaving it with the river, leaving it with the water. And so in deep, deep grief, and even now the grief that I feel in response to police violence against Black communities, the deep grief and pain that I feel in response to these missing women, the deep grief that I feel to my own stories of violence, I always find my home and my healing by the river. And I encourage folks to find their own body of water for that too. But she's the beginning, right? And she's in all of us all of the time. And while our stories of the river and of water connect us, it is also the water that connects us. Last year, I had the opportunity to see the Atlantic Ocean for the first time. And then a few months later, see the Pacific Ocean, which I had seen already. But it felt very powerful and cyclical to have stood in both oceans in the same year and in the same season, because that water has touched everything, right? That water has touched all humans. That water has touched the sky. And when we think about these very simple things that connect us, it helps us to remove all of transcend all of the material things, the plastic, the phones, the cars, the trucks, the pain, the violence, find the thing that connects us, and that's the water. And I hope you all lean into that. And when you are feeling grief and when you are feeling pain, even in this work, help yourselves and help the folks that you are trying to serve find their home and their healing near and around water. Thank you.
I think the love and divinity of storytelling is that we're always telling the same story through our own language, through our own sense of love. And, not for the purposes of theatrics, but I would show you the notes as I was listening to these lovely humans tell stories. And I was reminded of the story of how I learned what sacred means. And then I was filled with the need to make space for queer Black grieving bodies. And so to listen to both of these stories move around me and to know, oh, that's my story too, to turn to it and say, I am that too, is power. So to Tanya and your story, when I heard that lives and all of these lives and all of the ways that lives show up in the world would be sacred. I remembered living in a home that was experiencing turmoil and violence and poverty and confusion. And my mother and I were on her bed reading the creation story from the Christian Bible, that being the text that was referenced in my upbringing. And my mother got to a certain place and looked up and spoke to what I thought no one, and said, "I don't understand. Help me to understand." And in that moment, I understood sacred relationships. Not in that exact moment. I'm like 7, but it's the seed for understanding sacred relationships that there is opportunity to pivot and exchange and receive an expectation. And that's the sacred task of dreaming up the world without sexual violence, is that we pivot and exchange, and we speak with expectation, and we receive with expectation. That story stays with me, and living into that story stays with me forever, because my mother was just generally confused at what she had just read and spoke and said, "Help me to understand." And so when I know that we're all saying the same story, that we're all speaking the same story, what power exists just by being interconnected, even virtually, to know that my story will be returned to me, and then I can return it to someone else. And the both of us can then say, "I am that too." I vowed to a teacher of mine, Kim D. Joseph, who taught me that saying "I am that too," who she learned from a teacher of hers. When we exist in a world where we can look at harm and joy, violence and grief, queerness and Blackness, trans bodies, two-spirit bodies, and say, "Oh, I am that too," we receive and we give with expectation. And so this grief that exists in our streets, this grief that exists in our hearts, this grief that exists in our land, is a story that is returning to us multiple times over. And as we see those who are grieving, we can say with expectation to no one in particular, "Help me to understand," or "I am that too," and receive with expectation and answer. Okay? And that is the link back into returning. If you don't know what highway to go to, it's your sacred task and duty to speak with expectation and imagine that the answer will come, and go within the direction that sounds most true. That's a seed that existed for a long time, just by looking at my confused mother, who knew that she was going to get an answer just by speaking out loud. And so I speak that into the world. Wendy O'Neill says to us, she's a singer in our movement, and a person who helps us to live into queer bodies at times, says that we can charge the air just by singing and saying what it is that we desire. And when I desire to be healed, and when I desire a world without sexual violence, I can speak that, knowing it's my sacred task to expect it to come.
Even what you just said about "I am that too." There's a saying, a Mayan saying, that goes "in la quech," and it had been the rallying cry for a lot of Chicanx movements. That means "tú eres mi otro yo," you are my other me. And I think it just reminded me of the presence of all of your stories. I'm so just touched by you all being here, your deepest being. The way that Ariel introduced storytelling super resonated. I was thinking, oh, Ariel's also thinking of all our people who contribute to our stories. I felt myself change. I felt myself deepen and soften by each one of your sharings. And I think yesterday I was sort of I think I'm deepening into my storytelling practice where I trust whatever story is going to arrive is going to be the one that needs to arrive. And what I try to do is just to be present in my life. I practice. I'm a runner, and it's part of my prayer practice to run and pray for my people. And so I ran yesterday. I ran this morning, and Raven, you're a doula, so am I. And recently, I had the honor of supporting queer people of color family in bringing their first little one into the world. And yesterday, I decided that the one thing I was going to do was to be able to, I haven't seen them in a few weeks, was to take a medicine bag to this little one. And I prayed on it. My beloved and I shared seeds. I shared sunflowers, and that's a story for another day why sunflowers are so special to me. I shared sunflowers, and my beloved shared corn seeds from her friend from Zuni Pueblo, which are the oldest corn that lives in these lands in the span of New Mexico region. And we put them in the medicine bag, and I took them to her house, and I said hello through the window, and I gave her prayer and love, knowing that she is literally a person of the future, that she's going to be a descendant, that her descendants are going to that gathering. And that's how the story came together, because I had something to gift her, and she has so many gifts to give the world. And I'm so inspired by all of our acts of love, by the presence with which you've all arrived. Just sharing deep, deep gratitude to you all.
Thank you. So I want to invite now for us to experience a little bit of a reflection back of some of what we've been experiencing together. So Claudia, would you be able to go ahead and share your story that you've been creating?
Yeah, give me a minute.
Great, thank you so much. And as Claudia is getting that set up, we had a question come in about how we can connect with our ancestors, particularly when we may not know the details of the where, the who are our ancestors, where do they come from? And so I'm wondering, as we get that artwork put up on screen, if any of the storytellers would like to share a reflection on that.
I think we can turn to water again as reverberation into our bodies, which are also holders of our descendants and keepers of our ancestors. And so very simple practices to take your cup of water and to speak into it with love. And again, that sacred task of expectation, and invite in the remembering of people who have your best in mind, right? And using water then as offering to them. So offering to your body, which is for your descendants, or which is a part of your descendants and keeper for your ancestors. And then offering them water as well. Right? Water is life source, springs. From that is abundance.
I mean, that was exactly my thought. I echo exactly that. It's in the water. Speak to the water. Norma has also taught us about tactile relationships with nature, right? How often are you walking outside? How often do you touch or feel plants or feel wind or be barefoot in the grass or on the dirt, right? Those are all opportunities for you to reconnect with the earth. And that is a connection to our ancestors. And without being extractive or appropriative, right? Like we don't have to take berries every time we go to the woods. We don't have to bring sticks home every time we go. We don't have to take pictures. Just be in the space and feel the space and hear the space. And connecting to our ancestors is actually, while extract and seemingly unattainable, the easiest way to connect to who we are, because they are everywhere all of the time. And they are us. They are me, the way that we smile, the way that we laugh, our tears, like everything about who we are physically is also our ancestors. So tapping into that level of self-awareness and that physical power, breathing into it is really, really important.
So thank you, Claudia, for sharing some of these beautiful nuggets from the stories that are gifted to us in this time. And I'd like to invite Ty now to share a little bit of a breath practice. We've been taking in a lot of gifts of wisdom, a lot of questions, the feeling of it being hard to imagine a future, but the and yet coming into our throats, the and yet, right? So Ty, please take us into.
So if you are able, please have a seat or lay down, whatever is most comfortable for your body, what your body is capable of. Relax into that space. Feel the sensation on your left pinky toe. What does your right forefinger feel like? What are your shoulders touching? Are your shoulders relaxed? Relax into your body in the most comfortable way that you can. Close your eyes gently. Relax into that darkness that you see when your eyes are closed. Take a deep breath and imagine water, any body of water that you feel connected to, that feels like home. And take 3 deep breaths near that body of water. Imagine tepid, peaceful weather, whatever weather is most comfortable for your body. Imagine you can feel that weather on your fingertips, on your toes, in your hair. Choose the season that is most comfortable for you. Choose the season that you love. Now take 3 deep breaths by that body of water and in that weather. While you are by your body of water, you see someone coming. Imagine this person getting closer and coming into focus. And this person that you see is you. You see yourself as a child, or you see yourself as an elder. You're happy to see yourself. You are calm. You are comforted. Take 3 deep breaths. Share 3 deep, relaxing, calming breaths with yourself. For a while by this body of water, on this beautiful day, in this beautiful weather, you share time and you share space across your generations. You share stories. Most importantly, you share laughter. Take 3 deep breaths in that joy and in the rejuvenation from the water and in that weather that you love. next to the body of water that feels like home. Lean into those feelings. Lean into how grounded you feel. Hold on to the season and how it feels on you physically and emotionally. Hold on to the generations. Hold on to the life. And take 3 deep breaths. And as you continue to hold on to those feelings, gently open your eyes when you're ready. Gently bring yourself back into the space. And bring that love and that medicine back in the space with you.
Thank you, Ty. So I hope that you feel your breath throughout your being, that maybe your energy has gone from up in your head, possibly down into your gut a little bit. And so now is the time for us to spend a little bit of reflection. And so we're going to put up some prompts here for you to experience a little bit of your own storytelling. So I'm going to read these out. We're going to invite you to reflect in whatever way you feel called. If it's journaling, if it's doodling, if it's closing your eyes and letting the stories come through breath, whatever it is for you that will help you connect with the stories that need to be told from within you. What we'd like for you to reflect on is, I dream of a world without sexual violence where, what will it take to get from today and the world we live in to the world without sexual violence we dream of? What story do I need to remember or connect with to create that world? So you don't have to get to all of the prompts. You don't have to go one by one. These are just to help you sink into your own story, your own dream for a world without sexual violence and what it will take. What bold moves are being called forth within you? And what stories are you connecting with that will help you make those bold moves to create that world? So we're just going to take a few minutes. We're going to leave these prompts up here, and we invite you to sit with this reflection. we're going to come back. Thank you. Thank you. So now I wish that we all, almost 300 of us, could connect to each other's stories. As powerful as it has been to hear from these beautiful storytellers, I'd love to hear from all of you. But instead of that, what we're going to do is an imperfect way of just reflecting back a little bit of what might have come up for you. So we're going to put up a quick poll just to get a pulse of what you were reflecting on, what you were connecting with in your reflection. So here we go. So we'd love for you to share what elements, you can pick more than one, of course, came up for you in your story. Ancestral wisdom, healing from harm, building mutual support and community, fostering equity and interdependence, relationship to land and water, political engagement, participating in democracy. Just a few elements. I'm sure your stories had many, many other elements. These are just a handful. And we're seeing our responses come in, so we'll give it one more minute. Healing from harm. Many, many of you are connecting to stories of a future world free from sexual violence. We're healing from harm. Building mutual support and community. Thank you, thank you. So we can see many of you had these elements in there. Thank you. So now we're going to start closing our circle, closing our time together. And I wanted to have some reflections back from the storytellers and for wishes to be put into the circle, offerings from our storytellers to all of you. Since we do share our stories, they are all strands of the same cloth. Our offerings to you will be carried forward. And any of our storytellers, please, as you're called, kick it off.
I can share just that one of the things that our beloved elder teacher Norma Wong says, she says, fight for who and what you love. And when I think of the moments of my deepest transformation, the moments where I've been the most courageous, they've been because I've imagined and I've showed up for people, for beings I love. And right now, I fight, I show up, I have courage, I leap for Sol, who is an ancestor returning, a baby that I hope to be able to parent one day. A descendant of my ancestors, a seed of love for the future. And I fight for them. and offer a reminder that remembering, that dreaming, that imagining, that enjoying, thriving are happening right now. And whatever we decide to do makes our journeying, our offering, our sensing, our water council, and our collective harvest possible. Gracias.
In 1877, the Nimipu surrendered in Montana, Bears Paw Memorial. And it was the dead of winter. And our warriors had died, and some of our warrior women were wounded. And we were so close to Canada, so close to freedom. And in that winter, Chief Joseph surrendered on behalf of our people. And it's really interesting the way that that surrender speech is translated with English idiosyncrasy through the lens of a white colonizer who told that story on our behalf. But the way that we still tell that story through the generations is so much more powerful. That it wasn't about being sick and sad, that it was about being. It was about being. It was about continuing to exist and continuing to survive, and that at all times, we have a responsibility to honor all of the generations. So in 1877, my people prayed for me and prayed for all of the Nimipu Kimyuma, all of the people who still exist now. And so that despite the pain and the grief that I feel a lot in this work, I pray for the future generations and my descendants because somebody prayed and loved me into existence. And I believe that I'm not going to see this revolution in my lifetime, but if I work towards it, if I continue to work towards the liberation of just one person, then we all are liberated. And if I work towards the freedom of just one person, then we are all free. And I hope that we can transcend and decolonize our work, that we are more than our titles, that we are more than our degrees, that we are more than what schools we've gone to, that we are more than just the 9 to 5 and clocking out, that this is about hundreds of years of lives, several generations that we are responsible to, that we can both celebrate and honor them by the work that we're doing, by healing ourselves, healing the land, and healing our communities. I have a lot of gratitude for all of you being here with us today.
Gwendolyn Brooks wrote a poem about Paul Robeson titled Paul Robeson, and the closing line is, "We are each other's harvest, we are each other's business, we are each other's magnitude and bond." And I feel a lot of duty to speak to what may be the least of these in this moment. In that poll, 26% of the people who answered responded that their story included political engagement and participating in democracy. And in the middle of my story, I was reminded that I did grow up around water that could be celebrated, that I grew up near the ship channel in Houston and our water was poisoned. It turned brown sometimes when you turn the tap on. And returning to the deepest truth that exists is to say that water is sacred, that it is soft, that it carries, that it is passage, that it gives way to our ancestors, and it must be sacred. And that is a political story because my water was poisoned. And so many people's water is poisoned right now. And so what happens when we pivot towards a future where water carries us forward and we do not have to avoid it with fear of disease or confusion as to why the water runs that way? We are each other's harvest. We are each other's business. We are each other's magnitude and bond. I am full today just by being in this space where I could turn to each one of you and know that our stories continue. Thank you.
So we've reached that time. Thank you, Ty. Thank you, Raven. Thank you, Tanya. Thank you, NSAC. We're going to put up a slide now for you to be able to see how you can continue to connect with us. Join us in the Community of Resonance Network. We do facilitate virtual storytelling practice for you to try on how you too can turn to your spirit, turn to your ancestors, turn to your healing, turn to the water, turn to this work that will bring a world without sexual violence. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. Blessings. Thank you.